Good afternoon. It's a beautiful day, isn't it? Today, I'm going to tell you a story about life. Life takes many forms. It takes the form of insects, humans, animals, plants. All forms of life have one thing in common, and this thing is called the DNA. DNA is a molecule that carries the genetic instructions used in growth, development, functioning, and reproduction of all known living organisms. In other words, the DNA is the programmation latent in all forms of life. But before I go on and tell you more about the DNA and what scientists can do to it, I'm going to talk to you more about one specific plant. This plant is called amaranth. Amaranth is a very old plant, and it has carried very different names over time. It was first and most famously known and cultivated by the Aztec people, who named it Huautli. Huautli was a major source of wealth for the Aztec people. It was widely cultivated and used as a source of protein for the people, and it was also a spiritual plant which carried deep meaning and cultural signification. When the Spanish Empire invaded Latin America, they realized the importance of that plant. And so in 1519, Cortes decided to ban this plant. The official motive was it was a pagan plant due to its spiritual signification, so it had to be destroyed. It had to be burned. If people risked themselves to plant amaranth, they got their hand cut. Slowly, amaranth field disappeared, and with it, Aztec's wealth. But the story doesn't end here. The story still is ongoing today. Amaranth is an extremely resistant plant, so in spite of Cortes, it was still really hard to eradicate it from the surface of the earth. It's probably because it is so hard to eradicate that scientists gave amaranth its actual name. Amaranth comes from the root amara, which means deathless in Greek and in Sanskrit. It means eternal, impossible to kill. And it is indeed impossible to kill, or at least it seems to be. Today, amaranth is still widely spread in all of the south of the United States. Each year, farmers use tons of herbicides to kill amaranth that is spread all over their fields, especially cotton fields. The idea is that amaranth is competing with cotton for the precious sources of light and water and soil nutrients. Since 2005, the plant has become resistant to the most famously used herbicide, and so farmers don't really know how to do to kill it anymore. Amaranth carried the nickname of pigweed, which tells it's the weed for pigs. It is such a hated plant nowadays in southwest and southeast of the United States, even though it used to be the source of wealth of the Aztec people, and it has a very high content in protein and in iron, which are two very important elements of a balanced diet. Currently, it is being treated as something which has to be destroyed. So why does this matter? Why am I talking to you about amaranth when I said I was going to talk to you about life? Well, because in order to kill amaranth and other undesired species, scientists have been developing something called gene drives. Now, before I go on, I would like to tell you that my intention is not to make a dramatic expose of gene drives and to paint them as a weapon and something absolutely dreadful. Indeed, there are many promises associated with gene drives. And it is because of those promises, because of those potentials, that we need to be extremely careful. Because any new technology comes with a lot of promises. And it's important to take it in a broader context. So what exactly is gene drive? How does it work? Well, you know how if you have blue eyes and your partner has brown eyes, there is a maximum a 50% chance that your child is going to have blue eyes, right? Well, this is called the Mendelian rule of genetics. Explained simply, what gene drives do is that they make sure that a gene is going to be transmitted to the next generation. So if we take the example of blue eyes, they modify the gene in a way that whoever you would be partnering with, there's a 100% chance that your child will have blue eyes. The potentials of this are huge. It means that we can completely eradicate over long term one genetic characteristic for one given species. Okay, the blue eye example is not that great because it would take so many years for the whole population, the whole human population, to be having only blue eyes, right? So that's not a good example. But if you take species which have a very fast reproduction rate, such as some plants like amaranth, but also like mosquitoes, then it becomes very interesting because there's a lot of potentials, many things we can do. Okay? The technology used is called CRISPR-Cas9. This technology ensures to cut the chromosomes in one specific place and make sure that the chromosomes repair in this place with a modified version of the gene. Now, this is an absolutely fantastic and powerful tool. Imagine the range of possibilities if we can modify genes in such a way that not only the modified organism will be different from what it was born, but its children, right, will also carry the modification. Since our DNA codes for each and every single characteristic that we have, that any living creature has, imagine the potential of gene drives. Imagine what we could do modifying the genes of any plant, but also of any animal. One of the most funded research at the moment for gene drives is for application to the treatment of malaria disease. If you think about it, this is a really fantastic discovery on that front. Because malaria is one of the biggest killers in Africa. It's one of the biggest plagues of the continent. And managing to find a way that would stop people from dying from it is something that carries a lot of hopes for all the specific countries on the continent, right? Most people who die today from malaria are children under 5, pregnant women, elderly, and they all belong to low-income groups. They're the most vulnerable population, the most vulnerable of the world population. So not doing anything to help them sounds really unethical. One of the risks is that we don't know which other mutations could result from those controlled mutations. Those mutations on one given species could have other implications for this same organism, but also for other related organisms. For instance, if a plant is being modified and we eat it, then what is going to be the impact on humans? This is something we're not really sure about. And so it goes on the same with mosquitoes. Mosquitoes are part of a bigger chain. They're part of this all interdependent system of life. And so it's very unclear what the modifications on mosquitoes will have, how they will impact other species, right? Also, it's very likely that mosquitoes will develop resistance over time, and any application of gene drive on any organism might be met with resistance from this specific organism over time. There are different ways this can happen. One is that the non-affected member of the species might stop mating with them because they would sense the modification. So they would develop some kind of detector of the modified gene, and then they would stop reproducing with them, especially in the case of a very serious modification like making them sterile. The survival of the species is one of the most important rules, so it's very likely that they could evolve and protect themselves from this. Amaranth on one hand and mosquitoes for malaria on the other hand are kind of polarized opposites of the big spectrum of gene drives application. As you can see on this picture, Gene drives could be used for biodiversity conservation and preventing the spread of pests that kill all the species which are in danger. It could also be applied to human health and differently from malaria, but it could also help in this area. But one very important thing to keep in mind when doing this research is who funds it, who does it contribute to, who has a voice in the decision-making process and who does not, and are the person who are going to be eventually affected by the modification or being heard in the decision-making process, and that's very important. And this is why I started with the case of amaranth, actually. Because amaranth right now is a weed for the south and southwest and southeast farmers in the United States, but it's a big source of food for people in Mexico and down. So if the modification of the gene drive would make the amaranth sterile and kill, finally, the plant, if it is possible, then those people would be affected, you know? So just for the benefits of some people in the United States, for their market, then the whole of the Latin America would be affected, and the poorest would actually be affected by this decision. And do they have a voice in the decision-making process around the research? No, they don't. So this is why I believe it's very important to create a global justice discussion on this technology. Gene drives they're not a small thing. They have a huge impact on the life as we know it. So as I said, I'm going to tell you a story about life. This is the story about life. We are right now given the knowledge to change the very structure of life. This is extremely important power. It's such an important power that it cannot just be left in the hands of a few. Different types of knowledge, different modes of knowing, different types of people need to have a voice and to be heard when it comes to implementing this technology. When it comes to shaping the future of life, of any life on Earth, it has to be a collective process. Thank you.